They say a mother's love never fades, but no one tells you what it feels like when your child chooses someone who tears your world apart. It was a gray morning in Savannah, Georgia. Rain tapping the window, coffee growing cold beside me. I was folding Daniel's childhood photos, the ones I used to keep by the fireplace, when the phone rang. It was Emily, my daughter-in-law. Her voice was sharp, cold, like a knife dipped in sugar. "Mary," she said, "Daniel, and I think it's best if you don't see the kids for a while. They're confused. You're too attached." Too attached? Those children were my heartbeat. I raised them when Daniel was working 2 jobs. I held them when Emily traveled for her self-care retreats. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. I remember whispering, "Emily, please." And she hung up. That was the day my house went quiet. No laughter, no tiny footsteps, just the sound of rain and the slow breaking of a heart. If I had known that call was the beginning of my greatest test, I might have prepared my soul. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the phone, whispering their names. Eli, Anna. Days turned into weeks. Their toys gathered dust. The swing in the backyard still swayed when the wind blew, as if remembering them. Every night, I'd sit in the rocking chair and tell stories to empty air. I hoped maybe their little hearts could hear me. Daniel stopped calling, too. When I finally reached him, he sounded distant, like a stranger. "Mom, Emily's just trying to set boundaries," he said. "Boundaries?" I raised my son with love, with prayers, with nothing but these 2 hands, and now I was a boundary? That night, I opened the photo album. Eli's first tooth. Ava's first birthday cake. Tears blurred the pictures. My body shook with a grief no one warns you about. The grief of a living loss. Neighbors whispered, "Mary's losing her mind." Maybe I was. Because I started hearing their laughter in my sleep. And when I woke up, the silence felt louder than ever. But what Emily didn't know, what no one knew, was that love like mine doesn't die quietly. It remembers. And one day it acts. It came 3 months later. A white envelope, no return address. Inside was a drawing. Crayon lines. A house with 3 stick figures, one taller, with gray hair. Me. In the corner, tiny shaky letters. "I miss you, Grandma. Love, Anna." I held that paper to my chest and cried until my body trembled. Then I noticed something else, a faint hospital logo at the back of the paper. Children's Wing. Atlanta. I drove there the next morning, heart pounding. I didn't know if I'd see them, or if I'd be escorted out. But love gave me courage. At the reception desk, I asked softly, "Is there an Anna Thompson here?" The nurse frowned. She was discharged last week. But she's on follow-up for anxiety. Anxiety? For a 7-year-old? I walked out into the parking lot and leaned against my car, my breath shaking. Emily had told everyone I was the problem, but now I saw the truth. My grandkids were suffering too. And that was the day my grief turned into purpose. If Emily wanted a war, she'd get one, but not the kind she expected. I started small. Every Sunday, I sent care packages, not to their home, but to the local community library where I used to volunteer. Inside, books I knew they loved, with little notes tucked in the pages. "Be brave, Anna. Keep smiling, Eli. Grandma loves you." One day, the librarian called. "Mrs. Thompson, the kids came in. They recognized your handwriting." My heart skipped. What did they say? They just sat there and cried. I closed my eyes, whispering a thank you to heaven. I couldn't reach them through Emily, but I could reach their hearts another way. Then one afternoon, I saw something that shattered me again. Emily was on social media. Pictures of her perfect family, smiling in front of the same swing set I built. The caption read, "Finally peace, no drama." Drama. That word burned in my chest. But I stayed quiet. I knew something Emily didn't. Peace built on lies never lasts. And I had time. 6 months passed. Then came the call. Daniel's voice was broken this time. "Mom, can I come over?" When he arrived, he looked older, drained. He sat in the same chair his father once loved and stared at the floor. "It's Anna," he whispered.
She's not eating.
The school counselor said she draws pictures of you every day. My eyes filled with tears. Then bring her home, Daniel. He shook his head. Emily won't let me. She says you're manipulating them. That night, I prayed harder than I ever had. I wasn't praying for revenge anymore. I was praying for truth to come to light. But when you ask God for truth, sometimes it comes wrapped in pain. Because the very next morning, a neighbor called me. Mary, she said, you might want to turn on the news. And what I saw made my hands tremble. Emily had been arrested. When I saw Emily's face on the television, I couldn't breathe. Her hair was messy, her eyes wild, and under her name were the words, charged with embezzlement. I turned up the volume, my hand trembling. The reporter said she had been taking money from the private clinic where she worked as an administrator, forging documents, covering her tracks. I sank into my couch, the same one I'd cried on for months. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just whispered, "Oh, Emily." For so long, I'd wished for justice. But now, seeing her handcuffed, I felt a strange ache. Because even when life balances its scales, it never does so without pain. Later that evening, Daniel came over again, red-eyed, exhausted. She said she did it for the family, he muttered. To keep up appearances. To prove something. Pause. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the Georgia sky fade into twilight. I realized sometimes God doesn't need our help to serve justice. He just needs us to wait long enough to see it. A week later, I heard a soft knock on my door. When I opened it, there they were. Eli.
Anna.
Both standing there with small suitcases and tear-stained faces. Before I could say a word, Anna ran into my arms. Grandma, are you mad at us? I held her so tightly I could feel her heartbeat against mine. Never, my darling. Never. Daniel stood behind them, his voice shaking. The court's letting me take care of them while Emily's case is being sorted out. Mom, I didn't know where else to go. I looked at him, my boy, broken and lost, and I just said, you came home. That evening, the house came alive again. The sound of laughter returned. Eli found his old toy cars in the attic. Anna baked cookies with me, just like we used to. It felt like time had folded in on itself, like the pain had made room for joy again. But somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Emily wasn't the type to go quietly, and I could already feel a storm brewing beyond the peace. The courthouse in Savannah was packed the day of Emily's hearing. I sat at the back, clutching my purse, praying silently. When Emily entered, she looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes, they still carried fire. Our gazes met for a moment. Hers was cold. Then she mouthed the words, "You did this." I lowered my eyes, because maybe, in some way, she was right. Maybe my quiet prayers and her guilt had collided somewhere in heaven's court. When the judge read out her sentence, 2 years of probation, community service, and a fine, Emily collapsed into her lawyer's arms. The crowd murmured. Daniel turned to me and whispered, "She blames you, Mom." I just sighed. Then she still hasn't learned. As we walked out, Anna tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, is Mommy bad?" I knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and said softly, "No, sweetheart. Mommy just forgot who she really is. But life has a way of reminding us." I didn't know then how true those words would become. One rainy afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a small notebook in Eli's backpack. At first, I thought it was just his drawings, but then I saw Emily's handwriting. It was a diary. Pages full of confessions and plans. She'd written about her jealousy, how she hated how close the kids were to me, how she'd purposely told Daniel I was toxic, how she planned to move the family to California after the embezzlement money cleared. My hands trembled. Every page was another cut to my heart. I read how she made the children believe I was sick, unstable, that I didn't love them enough to visit. I could have taken the diary straight to Daniel or the police. But something in me whispered, wait. Because revenge done right isn't about noise. It's about timing. 2 weeks later, the local paper ran a story titled, "Inside the Clinic Scandal, A woman's fall from grace. I didn't think much of it until I turned the page and saw my name. The reporter had found Emily's diary, or a copy of it. It exposed everything, her lies, her manipulation, even her plans to flee. I never leaked it, but I had my suspicions. Daniel came over that evening, eyes wide. "Mom, you knew." I nodded slowly. I knew. But sometimes, Daniel, the truth needs to find its own way out. He sat beside me, holding my hand for the first time in years. "Thank you," he whispered, "for never fighting dirty." And as I looked at the children playing on the porch, I felt peace, the kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from survival. But life wasn't done writing this story yet. Because just when I thought it was over, another twist waited in the shadows. It was a Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. The children were at a friend's. Daniel was at work. When I opened the door, it was her. Emily. She stood there in a plain gray coat, eyes sunken but dry. For the first time, she looked human, not proud, not angry, just tired. "I came to talk," she said softly. I hesitated, every instinct screaming no, but something inside me whispered yes. So I opened the door. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one she once refused to eat at. She didn't look around, didn't smile. "I lost everything," she said finally. "The job, my reputation, even Daniel." I said nothing. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and her voice cracked. "I thought you wanted to take them from me. I thought if I pushed you out, I'd finally matter. But I was wrong." Tears filled her eyes. Mine too. For a moment, we were just two women, both broken by love, both haunted by choices. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. But for the first time, I saw her pain and it frightened me how much it looked like mine. After that day, Emily began visiting. Quietly, respectfully. At first, just for an hour. Then longer. Ava would run to her. Eli would hide behind me. Slowly, they started to heal. Daniel was cautious. "Mom, don't let her fool you again." But I just smiled faintly. Sometimes, Daniel, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a mirror. It shows who we are, not who they were. One evening, Emily came with a box. Inside were the kids' old toys, photos, and the necklace I'd given her on her wedding day. "I kept it," she whispered. "Even when I hated you." I traced the chain between my fingers, thin, fragile, almost ready to break. "Then maybe," I said, "we both have some mending to do." For a while, it felt like peace was possible. But peace built on guilt never lasts. And when Emily's health began to fail, the truth came out again, in the cruelest way possible. It started with fainting spells. Then nausea. Then the call. Daniel's voice was trembling. "Mom, they found something. It's not good." At the hospital, the sterile smell hit me like déjà vu. Emily lay on the bed, pale but calm. The doctor explained, late-stage pancreatic cancer. Too far gone. Too little time. For a moment, everything stopped. I sat beside her, holding her cold hand. "I guess life had other plans," she said with a faint smile. Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Emily, I never wanted this." "I know," she whispered. "But maybe this is how I make peace. With you. With them." That night, I stayed by her side. We talked until the monitors hummed her to sleep. I thought of all the years lost to pride, and I realized revenge had long ended. What remained was mercy. And mercy has its own kind of power. A few weeks before she passed, Emily called me into her room. She was frail now, her voice soft as a sigh. "I want to leave something," she said. "Not money, not property, just a letter for the kids. And one for you." When I opened mine later that night, it said, "Mary, you were right. Love isn't a competition. I wanted to erase you because you reminded me of everything I wasn't. Take care of them. Teach them not to hate the way I did. And tell Daniel, I finally understand what family means." I pressed the paper to my chest and cried, not for the woman she'd been, but for the one she'd finally become. I buried her a week later under the magnolia tree behind the church. The children each placed a flower on her grave. Anna whispered, "Mommy's sleeping with the angels." And I said, "Yes, baby." And this time she's at peace. Months passed. The house was quieter now, not from sorrow, but from calm. Daniel had found a new job in town. The kids thrived again, laughter echoing through the hallways that once held silence. Sometimes, I catch myself watching them play and think of Emily. Her mistakes. Her redemption. One evening, Eli asked me, "Grandma, did Mommy do bad things?" I smiled softly.
She made wrong choices, yes.
But she tried to make them right. That's what matters. He thought for a while, then said, "Then I'll make good choices. For her." And just like that, I knew the cycle had broken. I looked out the window as the sun set over Savannah. The same swing Emily once used for pictures now held Ava and Eli, laughing freely. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Because in the end, I hadn't won by revenge. I'd won by surviving and loving anyway. A month after Emily's passing, Daniel received a call from her attorney. "She left a will," he said. "And she mentioned your mother." I didn't expect anything. I already had peace. That was enough. But when we arrived at the small law office in downtown Savannah, my heart beat like a drum. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Emily Thompson leaves all her remaining assets, including savings and life insurance, in the care of Mary Thompson, to be held in trust for Eli and Anna." Daniel gasped. "She left everything to Mom?" I sat still, staring at the papers in disbelief. Then I saw the note attached, her final handwriting. Because she loved them first. And she never stopped. Tears streamed down my face. Emily's last act wasn't vengeance or guilt. It was redemption. As we left the office, Daniel put his arm around me. "She finally understood you, Mom." I nodded softly. "No, Daniel, she finally understood love." Life slowly found its rhythm again. Eli started baseball. Anna began piano. Every corner of the house echoed with music and laughter. Sometimes, I'd wake up early just to watch them before school, their shoes mismatched, their giggles pure. I'd whisper a prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for giving them back to me." Daniel, too, was changing. He smiled more now, spent time with the kids, and even started volunteering at the church food drive. Once he told me, "Mom, I used to think strength was fighting, but now I know it's forgiving." That night, I sat on the porch swing, the one that had witnessed every chapter of our pain. I realized that my story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebirth. But fate wasn't quite done with me. Because the past has a strange way of finding us, sometimes in the most unexpected form. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. A formal letter, stamped from Los Angeles County. It was from the clinic where Emily had once transferred stolen funds. They'd conducted a final audit. The letter read, "After review, it was determined that a third party had initiated the fraudulent transfers. Mrs. Emily Thompson took responsibility to protect the actual culprit, a family member." My hands froze. My breath caught. Who? I reread the lines again and again, until the final paragraph made my knees weak. Records show Daniel Thompson authorized multiple transactions under his account credentials. I dropped the paper. My son? I sat down, trembling. Emily had taken the fall, not to hide from guilt, but to protect him. That night, I watched Daniel play with the kids in the yard, laughing, happy. And I realized sometimes life's cruelest truths come wrapped in mercy. Because Emily had saved him. And he never even knew. I didn't confront Daniel right away. I waited, because truth, like medicine, must be given carefully. One evening, I asked him to sit with me on the porch. The cicadas hummed softly in the warm Georgia air. "Daniel," I said, "what really happened to the clinic?" He was shocked. His eyes darted away. Then he whispered, "You know?" He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean to. It was just one loan, Mom. I planned to pay it back. But when it got out of hand, Emily covered for me. She said I'd lose my job, my kids." Tears rolled down his cheeks. She said she could fix it. I listened quietly. My heart broke, not from anger, but from love. Because my son had sinned, yes, but the woman I once hated had saved him. I reached out and took his hand. Then live right, Daniel. That's how you repay her. Not with guilt, with grace. He nodded, tears falling freely. And in that moment, forgiveness didn't just heal, it redeemed. Weeks later, Daniel went to the authorities and cleared Emily's name. The newspaper printed a correction. Emily Thompson acted in protection of another. All charges cleared posthumously. The kids didn't understand all the details, but they saw their father cry at her grave that day. Anna held his hand. "Daddy, is Mommy happy now?" He smiled through tears. "I think she finally is." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the magnolia trees, I sat alone on the porch. I thought about the beginning, the pain, the silence, the loss. If someone had told me years ago that the woman who stole my grandchildren would one day become the reason we found peace again, I wouldn't have believed them. But that's what life does. It breaks us, then remakes us in ways we never imagined. And as the wind rustled through the swing, I whispered to the stars, "Thank you, Emily. You gave me back my family even after you were gone." Years passed quietly. Eli and Anna grew like wildflowers in the spring, tall, beautiful, full of life. The laughter in the house had returned, softer this time, matured by everything we'd lost and learned. Daniel worked hard, honest and humble now. He never missed a school recital or baseball game again. And every Sunday after church, we'd sit on the porch, the same porch where I once cried alone, and have dinner as a family. Sometimes, when the kids ran through the sprinklers, their giggles echoing through the neighborhood, I'd see Emily's reflection in their faces. It didn't hurt anymore. It felt like a quiet blessing. I realized something that day. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it transforms it into purpose. When Eli turned 16, he asked me a question that froze time. "Grandma, what was my mom like?" The room went still. Daniel lowered his eyes. I looked at that boy, the same gentle eyes his mother once had, and smiled. "She was brave," I said softly. "She made mistakes, but she loved you more than her own life. Everything you are, your kindness, your smile, that's her gift to you." He hugged me so tightly that my old bones ached. Then he whispered, "Thank you for never leaving us." That night, I sat by the window with my journal. I wrote, "They will know her truth through me. They will know love through my scars." It was a promise to tell their story one day, not of betrayal, but of grace. The years rolled on, and my hair turned silver like moonlight. The children left for college, Eli to California, Anna to New York. The house became quiet again, but this time it didn't feel lonely. Every echo in those walls was a memory. Laughter, tears, the sound of tiny feet. One morning, I found an envelope in the mailbox. It was from Anna. Inside was a handwritten letter.
"Grandma, I'm studying journalism.
I want to tell your story about strength, motherhood, and how love can heal even the deepest wounds. You're my hero." I pressed the letter to my chest and cried, not from sadness, but from the weight of fulfillment. I had spent my life being broken, misunderstood, betrayed. Yet, in the end, I became the story worth telling. 2 years later, Anna called. "Grandma, they're premiering the documentary tonight. It's called The Mother Who Stayed. You're coming, right?" At first, I laughed, then I realized she wasn't joking. So, I put on my best blue dress and flew to New York for the first time in my life. As the lights dimmed in the theater, the screen flickered, showing my younger self holding a crying baby, standing by a hospital window. The narration began. She wasn't their mother by birth, but by love, by sacrifice, by time, she became their forever home. Tears flowed down my wrinkled cheeks as the crowd stood and clapped. Daniel held my hand tightly. "Mom," he whispered, "you did it. You gave us all a second chance." And in that dark theater, under flashing lights and camera clicks, I realized The pain that once tried to destroy me had become my greatest legacy. Now I'm back where it all began, on the same porch, rocking gently in my old chair, the sun rising over Savannah. The swing creaks, the wind hums softly through the magnolia trees, and I smile. The world has moved on, but I remain a quiet witness to its beauty. Sometimes I imagine Emily sitting beside me, young again, smiling, peaceful. And I whisper, "You see, Emily?
They turned out fine.
We both did." My voice may tremble now, but my heart is steady. Because I learned that revenge may taste sweet for a moment, but forgiveness lasts a lifetime. Thank you for listening to my story. If you find it interesting, please like, subscribe, and share my videos.